My name is Judd Hendricks, and I'm the Executive Director, and this is our Enneagram Community of Practice. We meet on Fridays at 3 o'clock and explore all things Enneagram, and this has been a really fun group that I've enjoyed having on, and so I want to welcome those that are joining us on Zoom. Also want to welcome all of you that are joining us on Facebook. You'll have an opportunity to be engaged in the conversation. All you have to do is put a comment in the comment section, and we'll come to that and include you in the conversation as we get going. Thanks for joining us today. I really, I love the idea of a community of practice around the Enneagram because the Enneagram is so rich. It's got so many different ways in which we can engage it and integrate a lot of different wisdom and thought. And those of us that are doing this work really do depend upon kind of panels of conversation, because there's really no right, there's no right or wrong on this. I don't think it's just a variety of people looking at what I think is a really powerful wisdom tool for self-understanding and other understanding. And that's the way Interfaith Paths to Peace is using it, so we can cultivate our own self-awareness so that we can also have more compassion for other people and have harmonious relationships with other people through practicing compassion and understanding for them. So thanks for being a part of that emerging community. Today's topic is going to be on Enneagram and Archetypes. I do have a Prezi that I'll share that will get us into the topic. And then we'll have plenty of time for a conversation and discussion as we go. So thanks for being here today. There's two things that I want to talk about before I talk about Enneagram and Archetypes. This is a question that comes up a lot. Like, who has the authority to name the types? And so there's this, I found this just last week. These are all the different people that have done really good work on the Enneagram and kind of historical. And this is a description of all the names they give out of their own paradigm. So one of the nice things about the Enneagram is, again, all of these people on the left have been doing work in the Enneagram. And we try to integrate quite a few of these, but they all describe, in some ways, give different language to the different typologies. So I just show this not to go through it, but to show you there are a variety of ways in which we can name the types and words that we give to them. And it kind of matters what lens you're wearing to what you give and how you describe them. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that, because a lot of people are like, well, who is the final authority on naming Enneagram numbers? And the answer to that would be us, everybody in some ways. As we explore this, there's no right or wrong. And I like that too, right? Because if there became authority around it, then it would get too boxed up and it wouldn't be a living system, which I hope we can keep the Enneagram a living system. I've talked a little bit about the history of the Enneagram in the ways in which we use it, in the sources that I've pulled from and study. G.I. Gurdjieff, who was a Russian philosopher, really is one of the first people that we begin seeing working with the symbol. He created this group called the Seekers of Truth that would meet every once in a while in Russia, but they would go throughout the whole world and gather wisdom and knowledge. And then they would come back together and share what they had learned. And so the symbol, Gurdjieff says, came from a Sufi tradition, or he started working with the 9-pointed symbol, the circle and then the 9 points. As a symbol, he didn't have the typologies on there. So we begin seeing Gurdjieff working with it as a system. And one of the things about Gurdjieff, there's these two kind of thoughts or ways of looking at the ego versus essence. And so there's different thinking in the Enneagram community around, is the ego or the personality something that needs to be overcome? Is it a block to our essence or our soul? Or is it a manifestation of it? So in different traditions, you get different perspectives or value judgments about the role of the ego. And so Gurdjieff really was what we would call ego essence transformation. Echazo and Naranjo, who were in Latin America, they are the ones that begin putting psychological typology or names on the different numbers. Gurdjieff didn't have that. And they were somewhat believed that ego blocked the energy of essence. And so that our Enneagram number was something that we really had to work through as a negative, that it was a block to our essence. So you can still see some of that thought, today in some Enneagram work around how people relate to the ego personality. I want to go back to looking at Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff says, we need an ego and essence, both of them, that they work together to understand the self, so that they are in a transformative relationship with one another, kind of our essence, or what we may call our soul. And then our ego and our soul or our essence work together in the fullness of the self. His Enneagram he worked with the symbol itself, and he taught the Enneagram symbol through dance and movement. He really felt like the symbol was a moving, organic, alive thing. So he wouldn't say you get stuck on a point. He was very interested in moving through all of these energies that the Enneagram represented. So he was less specific to personality types as points. One of the things I really like about G.I. Gurdjieff, I don't know if any of y'all have done some work with him, but he said that your monastery is your everyday life, work, and relationships. He was very leery of people who would remove themselves from everyday life and work and to be spiritual, so to speak, because he really felt like the everyday work of human growth needed to happen right where we were, and that our relationships, that our work in the world was our monastery. So he was leery of people. In fact, he had a tradition of not working with people if they were going to leave their families or the work world in order to be spiritual. He would say, no, you've got to do that work back in your family. So which is a little different than some spiritual traditions that think, if I'm going to grow, then I need to remove myself. So there's a little difference of thinking with Echazo and Naranjo, that they think, they come from a perspective that we are born in essence, and then we gradually develop ego personality, which cuts us off from our essence. And so they actually, feel like once the ego, the separate self, is developed, that it cuts us off from our essence. And then the job is to return to a state of essence. And therefore we must divest ourselves of our ego personality. So they're somewhat ego personality negative rather than ego personality transformative. The idea that we're born in essence, it's lost, and then we have to regain it. Is kind of the perspective that they're coming from. And they begin developing Enneagram as a personality type, and they put typologies on it. And then all of that came into the United States. in around 1970s, originally through the Jesuit movement, and then came into California and was picked up by a variety of different people that started working on it. And they really have come at it from, and this is the perspective that I like. I'm a big Ken Wilber fan, and they're kind of a modern day approach is kind of both and to those perspectives. It's the idea that consciousness is present in seed form when we're born, and then it moves to ego personality that becomes the foundation for transcendent awareness. And that to transcendent awareness transcends but includes the ego and its earlier stages of consciousness. So the ego is not bad. It's a way the self forms, but it does have to be transcended or put in its right place, in its rightful place. And therefore, ego and essence are in a transformative relationship. This is also the perspective that Carl Jung had, who I'm a big fan of. And this is kind of a diagram of the way Carl Jung understood the ego and its relationship to the self. And specifically, that the job in later life is not to let go of the ego, but to have a relationship with the ego from the sense of self. So you can see in the far left, the ego is merged with the self. And then as we developed what he called the individuation process, the ego begins to separate from the larger self. But what becomes important in individuation is a healthy adult. What Jung said is that the ego and the self, the ego is completely individuated, but this line, the center line there, is the relationship. So the idea is that the ego must bow to the larger self. So the ego takes its rightful place in the self. And that's really what he thought a healthy individuated adult was, so that they fully form their unique individual potential, their soul, their unique individuation, but they keep a relationship to the larger self, or what we may call the true self. And so the healthy individual is somebody that has a healthy ego, understands their unique gifts, understands their personality that comes with that, but then that ego bows to, and Carl Jung would say that's what Jesus did with God, and he uses the term God to understand the larger self or the universal soul, where the ego bows to that. And that's what the process of becoming the Christ was, that Jesus as a human bowed to his larger self, Yahweh or God. And then he had the gift of Jesus, like he still had the personality of Jesus, but then that was in service to the divine or the larger self. And really, that's the way I work with the Enneagram. I think we fully need to embrace and love our egoic personality selves, but we don't need to get trapped by them or in them. And that's what ego personality work is all about. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit as we continue working with the Enneagrams. I wanted people to understand different schools of thought on the Enneagram and different ways they understand personality and the self. I can take a little break for a moment. I don't know if there are any questions or comments from anybody or questions of clarification from those that are on Zoom. If you want to comment about what we just talked about, anybody on Facebook is welcome also to add a comment or a question about that. If any thoughts, comments, questions about what I just it may have been so esoteric that you have no idea what I was talking about, and so therefore no questions. And this again, you gotta be an Enneagram junkie to get into the nuances of the ways people are dealing with Enneagram. But I figure we're an Enneagram community, so we can get into some of that. Okay, so to our topic of today, we're going to be looking at Enneagram and archetypes. And let me do a little description about archetypes. Archetypes, the term archetypes originally is a Greek word that means ancient pattern. And it's a pattern of the psyche, or what we could call the DNA of the soul, is the way some people understand that. Some people believe, like Carolyn Meese, y'all may know Carolyn Meese's work, Sacred Contracts. And I'll show my image here. Some people believe that when we come into birth, this is like a historical moment when we're born. But before we're born, our soul, and these are, again, all kinds of theories around this, that there are these archetypical channels, which are DNA channels of energy and human DNA that have been patterns that that humans have developed, so that we come into the world with these, what Carolyn Meese calls your archetypical wheel. So that you actually come into the world not as a blank slate, but you come into the world with these archetypical DNA in your psyche. And then how those archetypical DNA get played out is related to your environment. So the idea that we may have archetypical patterns or latent DNA for our psyches or our soul patterns that only get lit up or only get actualized because they're needed by the environment. They're needed by the world that we live in. And Jung kind of believed that the unconscious energizes certain archetypes in order to do the divine drama in the world. So that certain archetypes come on board and are created because it's an interaction with time, history, and culture. So we could say that, the archetypes, and Jung really coined this phrase. He actually would kind of say that they're rising from the collective unconscious into people's experiences as these archetypical patterns. And we can best describe these archetypical patterns because they show up in movies. They're these themes, so like the sage or the trickster, or actually I've got a screen. Jung kind of talked about the 12 main archetypes. So you have the artist, the ruler, caregiver, what's called the everyman or every woman, the jet setter, the lover, the hero, the magician, the outlaw, explorer, sage, and innocent. And this diagram here kind of breaks them into 4 categories. Jung didn't do that. Somebody else has come along and put them in these categories. But Jung kind of said he thought there were these really main archetypes. Carolyn Meese has done a lot of work with that, and she's got a deck of archetype cards, which I really use a lot. They're kind of fun. And I'll just show you what these are. They're the archetypical cards, Carolyn Meese, and she's got, it's kind of like a tarot deck, but she's got, like, I think they're 82 archetypes, and they come like with a description. This one's called the divine child, the servant. You can just see how she's naming these. Gossip. So these are the God is an archetype. These are upside down. The virgin, the prostitute. Actually, it's interesting. Carolyn Meese says that we all have the prostitute archetype in our wheel. We all have the divine, we all have the wounded child, the prostitute, the trickster, and I think there's one other, the victim, in our archetypical wheel. And then she would say we have 12 others that are primary archetypes we manifest. Anyway, so those are archetypes, right? And they come out in these movies. And just in a minute, we're going to look at, we may name some characters in movies that manifest archetypes. So what we're doing today is we're meshing archetypical ideas with Enneagram numbers. And that's what we're going to look at. And I'm specifically going to be using a book, and I've shared this book with you all before. It's a book by Susan Rhodes, Enneagram and Archetype. And so a lot of what I'm going to be reading comes from this book. So if you get really interested in this, Susan Rhodes is one of those that's done some, I think, interesting work with Enneagrams. She's done a lot of work with subtypes. And so the diagram I'm about to show you comes from her. This is her wheel, or her circle, her Enneagram circle, where she puts archetypical language and images to the different numbers, both their wing, the primary type, and then she divides what we've done some work on subtypes. So I'm going to come back to this, but I want to talk a minute about subtypes because that's what she uses. So the idea is that a subtype, each of us have a primary Enneagram number, and then we have a way that number is nuanced based upon our subtypes. There are 3 subtypes, what is called self-preservation types. And the self-preservation types, the instincts governs their needs for material supplies, physical security, including food, shelter, warmth, and family relations. The way I like to ask about your subtype is when you first walk into a room, what are you aware of? And self-preservation types are aware of the physical, like where's the snacks going to be? Or what's the temperature of the room? What's the most comfortable place to sit? Those are things that kind of nuance their Enneagram number. The second type is what's called one-on-one. Sometimes it's framed as sexual. I think that's a little misleading, but they're really interested in kind of energy. I would, instead of sexuality, it's kind of an energy. They're interested in intimate relationships, close friends, the vitality of life force within the body that we may identify as erotic energy. So when they walk into the room, they're interested in like, where's the most energy? Who in that room lights up for me? And they would often try to find a person, or they would try to ask the question, it's kind of an unconscious question, where's the energy in this room related to a person? And they would kind of move towards that space in the room or in a party. And then the social type is the third type, and their social instincts govern their needs for belonging and membership within the larger group and community. So they're interested in where they are, often in the ranking order of a social gathering. And they may go to the person or the group that they think where they belong the most, or where being with that group would give them some social status. So the idea is that we have an Enneagram number, and then you have one of these types, subtypes, that nuances your Enneagram number. So I share all of that because I want to go back to looking at the way Susan Rhodes describes the different numbers using archetypical language, but then she gives different descriptions based upon subtype. She really thinks that nuances. So you can see on the 2, we're going to start with the 2. The 2 kind of archetype is the Good Samaritan, but that's for somebody who's self-preservation type. The one-on-one type is in red, which would be the giving lover. And then the social subtype would be the public servant. So she says this 2 with a 1 wing would manifest these kinds of archetypes based upon these subtypes. And then a archetype, a 2 with a 3 wing would be the best friend, the seductive lover, and the social networker. So I want to look at these. So Enneagram 2s, right? Let's look at those. And I want to specifically, I'm going to be looking in her book. And let me name some of the archetypes. So what I want you to do here, for those that are on Zoom and those that are on Facebook, when we come to the type, this is what I want you listening for. When we come to the type that's in your line of integration, all right? So we use lines of disintegration and integration. What I want you to do is to be aware of these archetypal language. And then in a little bit, I'm going to give us an opportunity to use an active imagination to invite that archetype to come up in our psyche, and you're going to have a dialogue with that archetype. So for example, 8s integrate at 2s. And so if you're an 8, what I want you listening for is in a moment, I'm going to invite you to do an active imagination with one of these archetypes. Maybe it's the seductive lover, maybe it's the social networker, maybe it's the friendly host, or maybe it's an archetype that I'm going to read in a moment. Because what I'm wanting us to do is to open ourselves to the archetypical energy of our place of integration. Because I think that archetypical energy is something that we can call upon and rely upon in our psyches to help us be whole. All right, so that's a little, so basically what I want you to think about is, what's my number of integration? And I'll go through those and tell you. And then I want you listening for these archetypes, and I'm going to have you choose one in a minute after I read them from all the types, and I'm going to have you doing a practice with it, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, you can unmute yourself and I'll talk about it more, or you can put it in the chat box and I'll come back to this. So here are the Enneagram subtypes and the archetypes that go with the Enneagram 2. For the self-preservation type, it's the determined achiever, hardworking bootstrapper, success-oriented career seeker. Oh, hold on, that's the 3. I kept saying that's not a 2. Hold on one second. The archetypes for the 2, the self-preservation types, are the matriarch, guardian angel, mother nature, doting mother, effusive caregiver, homemaker, cook, nurse, midwife, fairy godmother, best friend, eager helper, matchmaker. For the sexual type of the 2, they're the soulmate, or the twin flame, the twin soul, total romantic, devoted partner, selfless lover, hopeless flirt, skilled courtesan, the geshe, seducer, enchantress, Casanova, playboy, harlot, divine prostitute, sacrificial Christ, Messiah, temple dancer. So that's the 2 sexual types. The 2 social types are the diplomat, ambassador, community builder, gracious organizer, neighborhood networker, humanitarian, social worker, human resource manager, event hostess, behind the scenes manipulator, power behind the throne, stage mother, bleeding heart, do-gooder. So those are archetypes for the 2. Are there any questions or thoughts about that? Anybody on Zoom or anybody on Facebook want me to go back and cover anything there?
That's kind of a lot to chew on without props.
Yeah, that is a lot. Again, what I'm wanting in our exercise is just to think about that as an archetype, and then we're going to do some work with those in a minute. So let's move to the 3. So the 3, the archetypes in the self-preservation are the determined achiever, adaptable go-getter, ambitious individualist, hardworking bootstrapper, success-oriented career seeker, the soccer mom, do everything mom, organizing pragmatic, dedicated apprentice, type A personality. For the sexual types of the 3, public personality, aspiring star, life coach, rising star, shining star, popular hero, heroine, sex goddess, glamour queen, fashion plate, cheerleader, quarterback, model of airbrushed perfection. That's for the sexual type. So for the 3, that's a social type, team leader, office seeker, opinion leader, politician, large-scale event organizer, head of the class, first among equals, image consultant, organizational expert. So those are the 3. So if you're a 9, those are some types that you might want to do a guided imagination with here in a moment, some of those that I just named. For the 4, let me name off some of those archetypes. So if you're a 1, you integrate at a 4. So listen to some of these as a 1 of ones that you might want to do a guided imagery with. Earthly, for the self-preservation 4, earthy bohemian, absorbed artisan, original craftsman, imaginative creator, teller of life stories, originator of new forms, the subtle weaver, colorful gossip, patient wordsmith, garden artist, interested teacher. For the sexual type of the 4, great dramatist, uncompromising artist, depth poet, method actor, talented writer, Russian novelist. That's funny. I hadn't heard that one. Restless soulmate, unfulfilled lover, depth of the archetypical psychologist. Ooh, I like that. I always want to be a 4 for some reason. They just seem so interesting. Moth to the flame. I haven't heard that one either. The romantic rival, intense seeker. They all sound like fun people to hang out with, don't they? You 4s are really fascinating. Or that's so said a 7, right? So the social subtypes with the 4 are pointed pundit, social critic, insightful commentator, social synthesizer, distinctive fashion designer, artistic trendsetter, tasteful artist, director, creator of public art, original stylist, feng shui consultant, self-conscious goth, maker of fashion statements. So, rebel without a cause. That can also be the 6. So those are 4s. So 1s, you may want to do something with those. Enneagram 5. So Enneagram 5, it's the 7s that integrate at 5. So if you're Enneagram 7, listen to these archetypical figures, because you may want to do some active imagination with them in just a moment. The self-preservation 5 is called the detached philosopher, solitary puzzle solver, silent pattern observer, mental tinkerer, shy philosopher, systems analysis, thinker, theoretical innovator, blueprint creator, amateur scholar, serious hobbyist, knowledge collector. For the sexual types, for the 5, it's the amateur sleuth, secret agent, professional spy, double agent, fascinated scientist, serious alchemist, secret investigator, the private eye, uncover operative, behind the scenes internet wizard, chat room enthusiast, chess player, private tutor, psychoanalyst, underworld guide. Those are fun. Wizard of Oz. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Wizard of Oz when I do mine. So the social type, subtype characteristics are the group observer, recognized expert, intellectual authority, honored teacher, tenured professor, knowledge dispenser, dispassionate facilitator, impersonal guide, historian, describer of oddities, dispassionate bodhisattva, the myth collector, anthropologist, tribal healer. So those are some of the 5s, archetypes. The 6s, so if you are 3, you integrate at 6. So these may be some of the archetypical characters that you may want to do active imagination with in just a moment. Here are some of their examples. The self-preservation type for the 6 is the shy loyalist, the gentle friend, family preserver, quiet doer, faithful companion, concerned parent, responsible parent, protective guardian, loyal employee, tentative friend, persistent warrior, nervous Nelly, warm welcomer, gracious host or hostess. For the sexual types of 6, it's the fiery rebel, the feisty friend, the debater, underdog fighter, scrapper, runt of the litter, fierce warrior, tender defender, defender of the faith, emergency medical technician. That's interesting. You know, that's funny. I know a couple of 6s that are emergency medical technicians. They can also be the beauty queen, Miss America, boy or girl next door, Prince Valiant, Braveheart. So that's the sexual type. The social type, subtype for the 6s are conserver of the social order, accurate historian, loyalist, careful recorder, community builder, volunteer, dutiful committee worker, dedicated prosecutor, staunch traditionalist, community protector, police officer, firefighter, member of the military, socially sanctioned hero, pillar of the community, boy or girl scout, upholder of law and order, the true believer. So those are some 6 types. You know, I've been doing, just a little comment here. I would like to do a Enneagram study of the police force, because I think that would give us some good insight into what happens in times of great stress around fear. I think that would be really interesting to take some of the things that we can learn about around how to help 6s, and what if we were to apply that to our police department? Because I think a lot of police officers are 1s or 6s, especially 6s. So anyway, that was just a thought. Anybody want to do that kind of research? I would love to join you. Sevens. So this is the ones. If you're a one, this may be an archetype. Some of these archetypes that I'm about to name may be something you want to do an active imagination with. Again, because it's in your level, it's in your line of integration. So they may have something there for you. So self-preservation ones, salon designer, Renaissance man or woman, family visionary, magical child, fun parent, pastry chef, gourmet chef, the good life liver, aficionado, family entertainer, visionary entrepreneur, interior designer, home improver. The sexual type for the sevens, the artless charmer, dance away lover, shameless hedonist, space cadet, comic, class clown, mimic, hippie, manic escapist, alcoholic, addict, minstrel, dreamer, artist, trickster, vagabond, aimless wanderer, juggler, innocent fool, wily coyote. That's so funny. I love wily coyote. And also, this is one's really true for me. This is a moment of, I did an active imagination about 8 years ago, and Rumpelstiltskin came up in my imagination. So he's a great archetype for the trickster. And I had this amazing dialogue with my inner Rumpelstiltskin. And that has been the most insightful active imagination I've ever done. What he told me has been so helpful in my life. I think to help me be healthy. Basically, what came up now that I'm talking about it was he told me that my trickster comes out because in a way of getting my needs met without asking to get my needs met. Because I have shame around my needs, the trickster comes out so I can get my needs met without admitting I have a need. And I was like, oh my gosh, that, so that doesn't, it's hard to tell people, what you're guiding, especially people that you want to be in relationship and say, oh yeah, my guiding archetype is the trickster, right? But it's true. Like if I'm not clear about my needs in relationship, then my trickster manipulates people to get my needs met. But if I will be clear about my needs, honest about my needs, not feel shame about my needs, and then I can have dialogue with people about whether or not, that those will be mutually met. If I don't have honesty about it, then the trickster comes out, and I find that I manipulate people to get my needs met. But it is around getting my needs met. So anyway, that's why I think it's really important that we know these archetypes, because they're psychological energies in us that will tell us what they're doing and why they're there. That's why I think these archetypical images are so important. So that's an example. But trickster came up because I am a sexual, social 7. So to finish the 7s, the social, unchallenged patriarch, the sun king, reigning queen, emperor, empress, court holder, ruler. Oh, hold on. That's the 8. I was about to say, that's not right. The social 7 is the social planner, political visionary, innovative architect, sacrificial idealist, high-flying utopian. I like that. Optimistic futurist, armchair revolutionary, intellectual anarchist, winged messenger. 7s also have a lot of Hermes energy. Hermes is in fact, I think that's the primary archetype of the 7. He had the wings on his helmet, and he would go between realms doing the bidding of the gods. One of the few gods that could go into all of the realms. But he was a Hermes, and I think that's the 7 energy. So that's the 7. Let's go on to the 8. I hope this is helpful, and I hope we're not going too fast, but let me keep going. This is the 8. The 8. So if you are a 5, 5s integrate at 8. These may be some of the archetypes you would want to work with. The self-preserving 8s, the father figure, the silent protector, the guardian, powerful presence, the heavyweight, giant, strong silent type, Samson, Hercules, Atlas, mountain man, mountain mama, force of nature, wilderness survivor, prepared survivor, mother bear, grounded warrior. That's the self-preserving type. The 8 with the sexual subtype are these: God or goddess, God's instrument, big brother, master craftsman, reliable rescuer, the king's champion, old west gunslinger, the knight errant, charismatic hero, heroine, honor-bound avenger, personal intimidator, the pirate king, the buccaneer, angel of death, Kali. Ooh, that's a good one. The sexual type for the 8, unchallenged patriarch, the sun king, the reigning queen, emperor, empress, court holder, ruler, autocrat, chairman of the board, big boss, born leader, leader of the pack, military general, commander-in-chief, respected craftsman, benevolent dictator, gifted technician. So that's the 8. So to the 9. And then we'll go finish with the 1. So if you are a 6, this would be maybe some archetypes you would want to work with, because they would be in the line of your integration. Self-preserving 9s, the practical person, patient endurer, steady worker, sensible detailer, nature lover, unassuming doer, contented putterer. That's an contented putterer. Appreciator of small things, enjoyer of routines, person of the land, wandering nomad, natural herbsman, crop picker, member of the tribe. The sexual types of the 9 are idealistic dreamer, spinner of tales, fantasy writer, mystical devotee, wistful soul, lover of love, tabula rasa, forgiving companion, enjoyer of pleasure, nature worshiper, mediator, animal lover, devoted servant. Social 9s are the willing participant, community member, natural mediator, calm harmonizer, blender of energies, dispassionate go-between, patient peacemaker, consensus builder, unintentional networker, teen coach, athletic referee. So finish up with the 1s, and then we're going to do a little activity here too. So the archetypes for the 1s in the self. So if you are a 4, you integrate at 1. So if you're a 4, these may be some of the archetypes you would be interested in doing an active imagination with. Self-preserving types is the detailer, the budgeter, exacting auditor, pioneer settler, wilderness tamer, dignified civilizer, careful worker, civic-minded voter, sober citizen, disciplined perfectionist, meticulous craftsman, American Gothic, mature miniature maker, frontier schoolsman, duty-bound family supporter, copy editor. I know a lot of ones that love that red pen. Love the red pen. Exacting bookkeeper, orderly gardener, Puritan and Amish. The sexual subtypes for the 1 ordained priest, father confessor, ascetic, the renunciator, evangelist, preacher, proselytizer, missionary, pilgrim, Puritan, ethical or spiritual counselor, an acting mentor, persistent interrogator, relentless investigator, God's instrument, fiery advocate, the protester, ranting crusader, possessive friend, jealous lover, flaming idealist. And the social type for the ones are careful rule maker, righteous lawgiver, high-minded legislator, rule-bound leader, fair judge, impartial jurist, inflexible decision maker, champion of justice, the Pope, spiritual spiritual leader, chief justice, religious educator, mother superior, parliamentarian, Old Testament prophet, legal advocate, tireless reformer, Miss Manners, and environmentalist. I know a lot of environmentalists that are ones. So before we go into a little activity, I'm going to open it up here. You may want me to go back. You may want me to clarify. Anything right now is open game for a question or a thought. And those of you that are joining us on Facebook, you're welcome to add those thoughts. And we'll bring them into the conversation. It seems like there was a question here. Is there a test you can take to figure out which one you are? Thanks, Stephen. Yes, Hudson and Rizzo have a really good test. It's $10 if you go onto Hudson and Rizzo's site. They give you a lot of good information. It's worth the $10 after you take it. There's the ones that I trust the most, but there's all kinds of Enneagram apps that you can have little tests on them for free. We've talked about this before. I really stand in the narrative tradition, which really believes that you need to learn about all the numbers and listen to people talk about their number as a way of learning them and then decide which one you are, because sometimes tests can be misleading. So I would encourage you to do both. Read up on all the numbers and then choose. And if you want to take a test as part of that, you can. Hope that answers your question, Stephen. So how about those of us on Zoom? I've been talking a whole lot. Let's open this up. You can have a thought or reflection, anything that was interesting about what we read, anything you really resonated with. Let's have a little conversation before we do our activity.
Again, that was an awful lot to take in. I would, if there were like 2 or 3 for each one, I might have been able to keep up with that, but there were so many. I just,
yeah.
It was fascinating to listen to, but I kind of got lost.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to name a lot of them is because I want to give you a fuller sense of all of the options. So as they kind of barrage you, it paints a pretty big picture of those types. So yeah, that is a lot, Fran. And again, if you want to go into more, I would encourage you to get Susan Rhodes' book. It's a good book. Any other thoughts, questions?
I thought it was interesting that, so I'm a 4, so the integration would be the 1. And when you got to I was very interested to hear it, and you got there and I was like, none of those sound like any fun.
Right.
I want to be things.
Yeah.
They're all very legalistic, and I don't like that.
Yeah. And I wonder what they have there for you. Like I do the same with 5. So like 7 goes to 5, right? And all of those 5s are so introverted. Like, and I just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine just sitting in a cubicle on my computer writing code. Like a code, like that's the worst thing. But I bet there's something there for me. And that's what we're going to find out in just a minute. What would those archetypes say to me about an aspect of myself that I may not be actualizing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to do in a second. We're going to have dialogue with them. In fact, you're going to sit in their seat. You're going to feel the energy of those archetypes in our active imagination. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, Julie. Anybody else? Susan, do you want to say something?
So if I'm a 9, I would integrate with a 3, and I was looking at listening, I'm slow.
Yeah.
I didn't get the social part of the archetype of the 3.
I can read some more of those. The social type is the team leader, office seeker, opinion leader, politician, large scale event organizer, head of the class, effective presenter, lobbyist, image consultant. Those are some of the archetypes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or thoughts? We'll do a little exercise here to close up that I think the experience of it, I think will help us become more clear. But I want to see if there are any questions or thoughts or anything I can clarify before we do this exercise. Yeah, Linda. I can unmute you there. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself. Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to unmute you, but it's not working. You have a button there that is your unmute button. You want to put it in the chat box? I don't know if you have access to the chat box. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you're good, Linda.
Do you think it's classic of a 4 to say, I can't relate to any of those, or do all people struggle and resist with that?
Well, if you can't relate to any of them and you think you're a 4, that would be interesting. I think there may be something in the 4 that resists being pinned down, right? So I could see an energy of the 4 like, oh no, I'm not like any of those. I'm special. I'm different. So yeah, I could see a 4 making those kind. And 4s a lot of times don't like the Enneagram because they feel like it boxes them up. And so a lot of the folks that have a lot of problems with, they're like, oh, don't box me up. The Enneagram, I can't be a number, and that's quite the 4 thing to say, because
Fortunately for me, I don't say that part. I love the Enneagram, but it's the subtitle.
Yeah. And so none of those kind of archetypes really felt like they fit you.
I might need to listen to them again.
Yeah. I can read a few of them. The archetypes for earthy bohemian, absorbed artisan, originator of new forms, colorful gypsy.
Maybe I wasn't listening because there's some bingos in what you just said.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, some of those.
I think those are the 4s, right? Not the 1s.
Oh, that's right. It's
because the 4s all sound fantastic. I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Oh, you were talking the 1s, Linda.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I imagine. Well, I think that's what Julie was saying, is like those are not very recognizable. And they may not want to be recognizable, right? Like you may not be too attracted to those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
probably for a good reason, I would imagine.
Yeah.
There might be something there.
That is always, I say that, I love that phrase. There might be something there. So yeah, thanks, Linda. Okay, so what we're going to do, now I want to, this is an important practice, so kind of hang on there. This has been one of, if I were to say there are, 5 practices that have been, for me, kind of transformative practices, this practice of active imagination is one of them. So the process of, there's a variety of ways you can do active imagination. The basic principles behind it, and I get most of my active imagination work from a guy named Robert Johnson in a little book called Inner Work, which I would just, it's probably one of my top 5 books. He's a Jungian analyst. And in this book, he looks at dream work and active imagination. And I just love his work. So in active imagine, there's a variety of ways to do it, but the central idea is what you do is you go in kind of into a meditative space, and you take time to kind of drop down, and it's kind of like a self-guided imagery work. You drop down, and there's a couple of things you can do. You can, a lot of times in dream work, if you've had a really powerful dream, take and invite the image that came up in your dream and go down into, sometimes I'll imagine I'm going into a place in the woods or a place I'm very comfortable. Sometimes I'll imagine I'm going down in a staircase within myself. I'm walking down steps and I get to a door inside of myself and I open that door, and then the image or the archetype or whatever I'm going to work with is in that room, like sitting on a couch or something. So there's different ways you can do it, but the idea is you want to open up to these inner energies that could take the form of an animal. It could be a symbol. It could be a color. It could be an image that just emerges, or it could be an archetype. And that's what I was doing with the Rumpelstiltskin when he showed up. I just went down into a meditation and I was like, okay, Psyche, you know, whatever character wants to come up, I want to have dialogue with you. This is the real key though. When you go down into that space, whatever you're in dialogue with, you stay in your ego consciousness. So you are in control of the conversation. And that's really important because sometimes these energies, if they could be a split off energy, they can be really strong and powerful. And you need to stay, you're the one questioning, you're the one exploring them. They're not exploring you. So I just want to, and usually I would do these in much more safer containers. And the reason I want to say that, if you've had a history of schizophrenia or any experiences like that, sometimes the archetypical energies can be so strong that they can overcome your ego strength. And that's really when you get into really unhealthy behaviors. Sometimes they also call this over-identification with a psychological archetype. So you can see people that are over-identified with one archetype, and that archetype gets so energized in their psyche that their egoic self doesn't know how to manage it. And that archetype will control your life if you over-identify with it. So we can talk about that a little bit more, but when I encourage people to do this, I really encourage you to stay in your ego strength with these archetypes, because they can be really strong energies. What you do when you go into them is you basically have a conversation with them. A lot of times I like to imagine they're sitting across in a chair. Sometimes I will know what archetype I'm kind of going down to talk to. Sometimes I just let the archetype arise, and you're welcome to do either. And then you have a conversation. So these are some of the things that you might ask. Well, a lot of times I ask, if they've just shown up, I'll ask, well, why did you show up in my imagination? What message do you have for me? That's always a really powerful question. What message do you have for me? And then you let them talk, and it may come out as words. It may come out as they take you on a trip somewhere. You may find that you're in kind of a movie, And that's why they're kind of guiding you. And then you just stay in dialogue with them. You just keep asking questions like, what message do you have for me? How can I integrate you and your energy is a really another powerful question. Because in dreams, that's what Jung basically said, dreams, it's the unconscious wanting to be integrated into the conscious life. And so you can actually ask them, you know, how can I integrate you? How can I listen and embody the message you have for me? Some other questions you might ask, and they're on your screen here. What events or personal characteristics led me to choose this archetype? And you can just ask yourself that question and listen to what comes up. What role has this archetype played for me? What prominent people in my past have nurtured this aspect of me, this archetypical energy of me? One of the things you could ask is, when did this archetype become part of my psyche? Because a lot of times there's an event maybe where this archetype really wanted to show up because it has an energy for you at whatever life stage you're at. So it may be one that you've journeyed with for a while. You could also ask, what archetype do I need to actualize to move through this stage of my life? And we could, you know, we can talk about different archetypes get energized at different life stages for different reasons. Those are other questions. What relationship might it have to my personal unfinished business? To those people I haven't forgiven, or to events in the past that I can't let go of? So the archetype may have some message for you there. And then always, like, what fairy tales, myths, or spiritual stories might this archetype be associated with? So like Rumpelstiltskin, I didn't really realize it was Rumpelstiltskin until after I was processing it. But I realized it was the Rumpelstiltskin archetype of the trickster. So what I want to do now in the time that we have remaining is I'm going to invite us into about 5 minutes of silence, and I'm going to lead us in that. So I'm going to guide you we're going to do the activity where we go into a place within ourselves, and then I'm going to invite you to either just open up to an archetype when we get down there, or I'm going to invite you to know one that you're going to ask to be present, and then I'll give you some time and space to just have dialogue, and then we'll come back out, and then in whatever time we have remaining, we'll share. So those of you that are joining us on Facebook, I would encourage you to find a quiet space. Those of that are with me on Zoom, let's begin. To do that, I would invite you to close your eyes and to become aware of your breath. I invite you to extend your breath, take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Do several deep breaths. Find that you're beginning to become still. With each breath, you begin to drop down into your body. You may scan your body for any areas of tension, just kind of release those. Come into a comfortable resting space. Notice that your mind begins to get a little more quiet. I'd like to imagine a piece of black velvet right in front of my eyes, so a soft blackness. And this darkness or blackness is comfortable. It's a soothing darkness, calming. Now I'd like for you to imagine a stairwell. Maybe you find this stairwell in your home or in your backyard, but you notice that it goes down. And it's a comforting stairwell. You feel good about going down, and it could be a windy stairwell, or it could be just steps down. And so imagine yourself kind of with each breath in, descending the stairwell. And it gets darker. As you are descending, you notice down below you that there's a door. So you keep walking down and you see that it's a door handle, and it's a door that opens up deep in the earth. So you open the door. When you open it, you see a really comfortable room, the kind of furniture you like. It's decorated in soft light. You feel very at home here. And you see that there's some comfortable chairs. So you walk over and imagine sitting down and feeling the comfortable chair where you're at peace and at rest. And there is a chair across from you. And what I'd like for you to do is to imagine this archetype or a figure, or just open up to who wants to join you there in this room. And I'll give us 3 or 4 minutes in silence to have a conversation with whoever shows up. You may find that you go on a journey, or you may find that the image changes, but have a conversation asking some of these questions. I'll give us some moments of silence to do that. Now begin to wrap up your conversation. You can do that with maybe giving thanks for the conversation. You may want to end with some kind of hug or some way of departing from one another that acknowledges the connection and the wisdom that has been shared. And as you're ready, you're going to make your way back to the door. And you can leave the archetype if you want there, with a blessing to remain. And then open the door and find yourself beginning to walk back up the steps towards a light. And as you walk up, feel yourself coming back into your body. You get towards the top. And as you emerge, you're back in your yard or back in the space. And you feel refreshed. Notice that you feel calm and in yourself as you emerge. And as you're ready, I would invite you to take in 3 deep breaths. And on the 3rd breath, you're welcome to open your eyes and be back in the space. Okay, welcome back. Thank you. So we've got just a few minutes left, but I would like to take some time for us to debrief that experience with each other on Zoom. So I'm fascinated by stories of what happened. What did you make of it? Again, it doesn't have to be revelatory, but I would love to hear some people's experience. So if you just want to unmute yourself and share to whatever level you would like, what happened? You're welcome to do that on Facebook as well. If you participated, you're welcome to add a few words of comment. Judy, would you like to share?
Well, I think maybe it's, for me, part of it is uncomfortable with the whole computer thing, but I found myself being resistive. I didn't want to go down the stairs. I kind of stomped down. And I opened the door, the only archetype I could remember from the 3s was the last ones you read, because I'm a 9, so 3 would be where I was. And sitting in the chair was the one that wanted to be an office holder. It was just the only one that came to my mind.
Yeah.
I said, I don't like you. I don't want you. Go away. And then I said, well, all right, I have to examine my resistance. Why am I so resistant? And so then I said, what can you teach me? And what message would you have? And I didn't have like an image, but just the archetype said, well, you could be your true self. You could really live your values, and you could also be honest and out there. You have the courage to put yourself up there. And I just told them I didn't want to. I was scared, and maybe there's a gift there, but I'm not ready to receive it. So I walked back up the stairs and shut the door behind me.
Well, know that office holder is in you and available to you. Thank you for sharing that, Judy, because I think that is often the message that it's a message that we're not sure we want to hear, or what would be the implications if that is a piece that we need to actualize. Yeah. That's why angels in the Bible, whenever angels come, the first thing they say is, do not be afraid. Because angels know that what they're about to tell us is going to bring up fear.
Yeah. I think if I could remembered some of the other archetypes from the other subtypes, I might have found one that was compatible. But
Well, I imagine, yeah, the one that showed up was probably the one that needed to be there, but. And you can do this again, right? I mean, you could do it again and just be open to whatever wants to come up. And, you know, who knows what kind of archetype of that might be as well.
right.
Well, thanks for sharing, Judy. Yeah, I appreciate that. Suzanne, how about, got a story? You're on unmuted. No, actually, I'm not hearing you. It says you're unmuted, but try again. No, I don't. There we go. Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I was talking to some authority figure, female, that the event planner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I had so much fun planning, bringing people in and figuring out activities and for after the planet like does a reset, you know, it's like, oh, remote viewing and people into their intuition and just someone that's expert and just like, okay, get your mind into like, you're healed. So you're healed.
Yeah.
So just be preparation for, you know, the planet's reset and you're in good health, you know, it's like
Yeah.
people not getting it, that it's available to them.
Yeah.
So it's all kinds of fun events for that, for getting people awake to that.
Yeah. You know, I'm really interested. I'm making a connection now between maybe what Judy just said. So one of the ideas is that these archetypes are collective archetypes and they're not necessarily individual. It's interesting, the office holder and the event planner, like if the unconscious was going to talk to us and energize archetypes for the healing or the reorganizing of the planet, you know, running for office is a big, you know, everybody's becoming civic minded, you know, and how do we engage in our civic, and then planning all these events that you're talking about. I mean, that's another thing. Yeah. After the world is, you know, whatever it's going to be, we're going to need people to do that. So that's kind of fun. Well, I hope that was energizing or interesting.
Yeah.
So we got time for one more. Anybody else want to share? I'll share mine. Mine was, yeah, I went down, and who showed up was this, the scribe. And he was like an old, he had like one of those, kind of a beret, I don't know, like, but he had a quill in his hat. But he also had one in his hand, and he was like an old-timey scribe. And he was talking to me about my dissertation. It was really funny. It was like, because I finished all my coursework and I'm trying to write my dissertation. And he showed up and said, yeah, I'm the scribe. I'm the one that's going to help you write your dissertation. And you're going to have to be disciplined in order, you know, for me to come online. But he said, but you're going to like the discipline. He said, you're actually going to be, as me, you're going to really want to write. Like you're going to get passionate about writing, and you're going to find all your extroversion, which is my challenge to actually being by myself and writing. He said, you're going to find that it feels like your extroversion is distracting to you. He says, you're going to want to feel like you're alone. You want to be alone. And all these other extroverted activities are going to feel like a distraction. So he said, don't be afraid of me. He said, when you are me, these are things that are just naturally going to come to you. So that felt great to me because I'm really concerned about whether or not I'm going to get this dissertation done. Just because I don't like to sit and do all those things that people have to do to get dissertations done. But that was really cool. Like I was like, oh wow, it would be nice to find that discipline in myself to be alone and writing will be pleasant. So that was a really positive, good message for me. And there's part of me that actually believes it. I was like, oh, all right, I'm gonna become this scribe. So. Well, once again, let's see, we had a comment on Facebook. I think my session might have been hijacked. I just waited for whomever to show up, and a hippie-ish young woman showed up and told me, peace is yours. There is so much love here for you, and this is not your work. I think this was related to something I've had some anxiety about. Wow, Suzanne, that's powerful. A hippie-ish young woman showed up and told me, peace is yours. There is so much love here for you, and this is not your work. Wow, that's really beautiful. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That sounds like archetype language to me. I mean, my sense is these archetypes really speak really clearly and specifically. Like they just name it right there. They don't have to say a whole lot, but they just go right to what it is. It's kind of like, the pronouncement of angels or whatever. It's just like, boom, they just go right there. You don't have to have a lot of conversation, just boom. Peace is yours, and there is so much love here for you. I mean, that's not just a message for you, Suzanne. That's a message for all of us right there. So thank you for sharing that on Facebook. I appreciate that. Well, you all, we're out of time. So thankful for you all just being together and moving this work forward. I do want to let you know, next week, Carrie Van Winkle is going to be doing Enneagram and money. This is going to be so good. And she's done a lot of work in this area. I don't know if y'all know Carrie. She's she works with a lot of organizations and business, financial planning and stuff. So invite all your friends to come next week at 3:00. She's giving her time and energy to do that with IPP for free, talking about Enneagram and money. So put that on your calendar and come back and join us. Be really good stuff. Thank you all. Peace be with you. I appreciate y'all being together on Sundays. And we'll catch you next Sunday. Have a blessed weekend. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank
Friday.
you.
Friday.
Yeah, see you Friday.